So with that, hello, everybody. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining me today. For those who aren't familiar, we are GReminders, an online scheduling, reminders, and automation platform built for advisors. So our main goal is to limit human error, streamline and increase productivity, and of course, reduce no-shows in your practice. You may have seen me before. I do most of the webinars for GReminders, but for those of you who don't know me, my name is Ziara Burkett. I am the Partner Relationship Manager with GReminders. A little background on me. I also come from the financial services industry. I was a marketing director for an advisory for a number of years. So I'm familiar with a lot of those pain points that advisors and operations team members are maybe experiencing when it comes to scheduling and those really extensive follow-up processes. I have built many advisories CRM databases across multiple platforms like Redtail and Wilkbox. So I really aim to just help advisors to get and keep clean data within their CRM and organize those operational processes along the way. So GReminders is unique in that it completely automates processes that would otherwise be so extensive that it'd be necessary to whiteboard them out and then build them into an elaborate workflow. We are really striving to not only automate your scheduling and reminders, but also utilize the CRM in tandem to create this relationship between scheduling, processes, and the CRM. So what I mean by this is, how many times have you chased a prospect to schedule with you only to kind of worry that they're not even going to show up for the meeting? How long does it take to make those annual review scheduling calls each month? Have you asked your CSA lately? Can your time and your teammates' time be better utilized, be it servicing clients, servicing the firm, growing your business? As we spend the next hour or so together, these are a few of the questions I think are really important to keep in the forefront of our mind as we talk about use cases, tools in the platform, solutions, etc., because ultimately that's how we've created this best practice walkthrough. We've taken these everyday, admittedly sometimes laborious tasks and tried to eradicate them with essentially the push of a button. Now, in the first part of our best practice series, we're going to run through the scheduling and reminders portion of our platform. We'll talk about all the necessary meetings you should have built into your event type templates, reminder templates, and why it's so important that there is consistency in your brand and the message that you're conveying. We are going to talk about the best ways to keep and manage your calendar so you can run efficiently out of it. For GReminders, for those who aren't aware, is really meant to be a back-end tool. So your goal initially should be to set up GReminders one time and then just let us work in the background of your CRM and your calendar. So if you're set up in the best possible way initially, you won't even really know that we're there. If we're doing everything we're supposed to be doing and we're a part of your processes in such a way that have been built efficiently. I'll also be touching on our Chrome extension called the GR Sidebar. This is how you're going to ensure that you're keeping yourself accountable with how you manage your calendar. So we're not overbooking ourselves. We're setting disposition on our meetings to track our no-shows. Did they show to that meeting? Did they not show up? So with that, let's kind of jump right in. So the first thing that we look at in the platform, and before we jump in, sorry, to make a note, the deck is going to be available to all of our registrants and attendees. So there's a lot of information on each of these cards. It's not necessarily meant to be read through all of right now because I'll be talking about it. This is really meant to be a resource after the fact in our webinar. So follow along, which is great, but don't feel like you need to consume all of this information because it's meant to be a resource for after. So the first thing that we look for, or that we're going to look at in the platform, are the event type templates. So if you sign up for GReminders today, if you were to sign up for a trial today, you'd be met with a series of questions like, what CRM do you use? What type of advisor are you? Are you duly registered, fee-based only, or an annuity advisor? And then based on your answers, we will build out what we recommend to be the bare minimum recommended event type templates and reminder templates for you. So they'll be preloaded into your platform. So half the work will be done for you before you've really even gotten the chance to kind of show yourself around and play with it. But this is really aimed to be a starting point and not necessarily something that you must adopt. But it is meant to kind of guide you in the right direction. It's really recommended that you build out each of your meeting types into GReminders. So a great way to do this is to whiteboard with your team. And what that looks like, whiteboarding is where you'll sit with your team and go step by step through your meetings and their surrounding processes. So this is a great way to build out your CRM workflows to really establish that clarity and efficiency, but also just a really great way to make sure that everyone is informed and on the same page and operating the same way. Now, most advisors, this is the entire onboarding process in all the existing client meetings whenever we're whiteboarding these out, and how they should be built into GReminders, all of those meeting types. So the entire onboarding process and the existing client meetings. So for your firm, this could really look like 3 to 5 meetings from like introductory to close. For existing client meetings, this would really extend to like annual review, biannual review, new business meeting, year-end tax planning, strategy meeting, statement review. Any of those meetings that you have on a regular basis should be built and have an individual event type template in GReminders. So sitting down with your team and establishing what your processes are is really integral when you're building it into GReminders. Otherwise, you'll be building and then rebuilding again until you have figured out what works for your firm or getting everybody on the same page. So from here, I'm just going to jump into our platform and just take you through a typical event type build out and what each section is and its benefit to you as an advisor or for your advisor. So if you do have any questions as I'm going through, please feel free to ask them. I've got the QA open and I want to make sure that all your questions get answered before we move on to the reminders side of this. So without further ado, when we first jump into our event type templates in GReminders, which you'll be able to find under management, you'll navigate here. Let's, for the sake of argument, I think most advisors take initial consultations, or maybe some call them introductory meetings. And let's just work through this build out and where we see main key points for financial advisors. So the first card here being the public facing information. So on that booking page, you'll see a public name, a public description, and then a short name for that. Now you'll also take note that each of these cards or each of these sections can be locked. And so what that's going to mean for you as an administrator on your GReminders platform is you can build out this event type template and then lock the cards that you don't want individual users to be able to adjust or change. Oftentimes you'll see this for the name of the meeting. Maybe we want to keep, consistent calendar management and make sure all of our initial consultations are named the same thing rather than John Smith taking an intro call versus Nancy taking an initial consultation. This is just going to ensure continuity throughout your platform so that way it can be templated much easier. And then an internal description. I always recommend this, just explain exactly what it is, but it's only internal facing, so you don't have to worry about clients or prospects seeing this. You can also add your meeting locations here. So for instance, for an initial consultation, let's say I don't do any introductory calls over the phone. I'm not going to add the phone call as a potential location, but I can add my video conferencing platform or the individual address. And then this is going to give the client or prospect, obviously, the choice to choose if they want to come in for the meeting or if they want to do it over Zoom, Google Meet, what have you. The event bookings criteria. So obviously familiar to most automated scheduling platforms. This is really just where we're talking about how are we managing our calendar? How many initial consultations am I taking in a day? And this is where whiteboarding those processes really becomes a necessity, because I need to know before I'm building the event into my GReminders platform, what are the ramifications around this? What are the processes? What are the steps leading up to meeting with a new prospect that my team has to take care of? Because that's going to be indicative on how soon I am allowing people to book with me. whenever they receive this link. So what I mean here is like, prevent events being scheduled less than 2 days away. Maybe my team needs a considerable amount of time to prep for these, so I want to push that out a week, or maybe I can take them within an hour. It depends on what your existing processes are, and that's why it is so integral that you make sure to whiteboard these out. So for an initial consultation, I have 15 weekdays, so 3 weeks out. I'm allowing the prospect to schedule with me. I think in general, a good rule of thumb with advisors is less than 3 weeks for introductory meetings. If that's kind of how I think you can gauge a hot prospect, a hot lead, is how quickly they'd like to get in with you. And then of course it makes, closing that much easier, especially if we can get them in as soon as possible when they're showing peak interest in booking with us. So less than 15 weekdays, I think, is a healthy medium on allowing people to book with you. And oftentimes, if you're using our links to book externally, that's going to be plenty of time for them to find a date. For initial consultations, if this is a public booking link, sometimes people embed their initial consultation links into their website. We want to require prior approval just to make sure that not everybody has access to our calendar, or maybe there's a pre-qual system that you go through with your CSA where they reach out, or your marketing director where they reach out, they pre-qualify the appointment before you sit with it. So this is just a really neat tool to have. A fixed duration on the event. So how long are your initial consultation meetings? I've seen 30 minutes for some advisors. I've seen an hour for others. What are you trying to accomplish within this appointment, and how long are you going to need for that appointment? So again, very important to make sure that you know the ramifications and how long as an advisor it's taking you to introduce yourself, your firm, and get to know this prospect. So times can be scheduled on the hour, on the half hour, 15-minute mark, or you can let our system optimize for you. For things like this in general calendar management, this is actually going to be pointed towards your working hours. So whenever we're thinking about filling this in and what makes the most sense for our firm, I want you to think about what are my working hours? Am I only taking appointments at 9, 11, 1, and 3? And those are my only appointment slots for the day. Or am I taking meetings between, 9 and 12, and then our office closes for lunch, and then we open back up 1 to 4, and that's whenever I'm taking meetings. So it's just dependent on how you're working and what your days are driven like. If you're taking those meetings at certain meeting times, let's leave it to on the hour. But if you'd like it to be a bit more dynamic and let the system kind of plug it in on the half hour mark, you have that ability to do that as well. A buffer. So this is probably, it's often overlooked. I think most advisors say, oh, I need 30 minutes between a meeting. And then they set that for every single meeting type. And then one day, and I use this example later, they find that they have accidentally somewhere along the way scheduled a financial planning strategy meeting between 2 plan presentations with 30 minutes to switch gears, finish what you need to do from the plan presentation, switch gears to the strategy meeting, and then switch back to a plan presentation mentality. And I think that that can get a bit overwhelming sometimes. And so being more cognizant and not letting your calendar drive you, you should be driving your calendar. Give yourself some wiggle room between your meetings, especially because we don't want the client service side or that client touch or that client experience to suffer. I recommend anywhere between 30 and 60 minutes given the meeting. I think initials are pretty easy to kind of flow through. I've worked for an advisory that can churn through some introductory meetings, kind of one after the other with 30 minutes in between. And then maybe do the maintenance for those later once they have a deeper pocket in the day to dedicate to some of those back-end processes. But at the same time, if that's not you, there's no shame in that. Control your calendar. So if you know you need 60 minutes between meetings, set that for yourself, and it can always be adjusted later. The max number of events per day. So this is really where we start to see GReminders become the platform that we are marketing it as, being built for advisors. So let's think about an initial consultation and of this category. So you can set meeting type and meeting category yourself, or for my Redtail users, this is a really great way to keep data consistent. If you're using that Redtail calendar, meeting type and meeting category speak to activity category, and activity type in Redtail. So whenever we're looking at the calendar, if I see, or if GReminders sees that there is already 4 initial consultations scheduled that day, we won't offer that as an available day to book, whether it's externally or if you're booking yourself internally through your links, you won't see that at all as being an available day. So this is a really robust way of controlling your calendar and making sure you're not overbooking yourself somewhere. The max number of events per time slot for overlapping bookings. This is so nuanced. I feel like for the first time, I've been here at GReminders for a year, and for the very first time I saw a financial advisor that wanted to be able to overlap bookings and kind of do multiple different things on different calendars. So I recommend leaving this as it is. Time zone, best practice here, leave it as dynamic, especially if you're an advisor that touches multiple different clients in multiple different time zones. Because what this is going to enable is whenever I'm scheduling, and let's say I'm in California, but you live on the East Coast or you service out at the East Coast, it will show me in California, my time zones, or your availability in my time zone. So that way there's no confusion for booking with those dynamic differences. So you can fix this. If you don't have to worry about that at all and you don't service anybody outside of your time zone, you can leave it to fixed. But I always recommend that you leave this to the default of dynamic, because there's been plenty of instances where people have booked in a weird way and then they get reminders and they're like, I don't know why I have a meeting at 3 a.m. So just to be careful in that, I always like to point out. Last here, again, meeting type and meeting category. So you can set these and customize these, or if you integrate your CRM with Redtail, these will populate automatically for you with your activity type and activity category. So just a really great added benefit of the integration there. I do want to point out, for those who may not know or haven't read the descriptions for our other webinars, I'm going to be deep diving into how GReminders integrates with Redtail, Wealthbox, Precise FP, a few of our other big integrations in part 2. So any questions that you might have pertaining to the integrations, I'm happy to touch on now if we have time, but just know that those will all be addressed. I just wanted to lay some foundational knowledge, but you will hear pointed terms about different parts of the integration as we're going through event type templates and reminders. Okay, so moving on to form questions. So this is how we're going to be collecting information. And then again, this can be written back to your CRM. So we have typically our first name, last name, email, phone number, our street address. This is an initial consultation, so I want to collect as much information as I can and however much the prospect is really willing to give me. And then maybe some personal questions. How do you prefer your coffee? What's your favorite snack? What's your favorite drink? I know a lot of advisors that really like to have this information going into the meetings, because sometimes they provide coffee or refreshments or snacks. My advisor used to offer cookies whenever you would come in and sit down. So this is just a really good way to add client touch, because if that is something that you're doing in your office, you can know before they even sit down in that initial consultation, you have their favorite snack there. You've got their drink already ready to go. And then, of course, any hobbies. I know a lot of advisors collect information like this, so that way when they're putting on client referral events or sending out different mailers and things like that, you already have that information and you can pull that immediately, those lists in your CRM. So all of the values that people write here can be written back to the UDFs in Redtail, and then the custom fields in Wealthbox. To move these around, change what this looks like, you'll just hit reorder fields and you can drag and drop these wherever. And then, of course, to add questions, it's very simple. You add the question. You can have pre-existing questions, which we're going to talk about in part 3 of our webinar series. Or you can just create one-off questions really quickly. If you know that this isn't really going to apply to anything else, any other meetings, you don't need this templated. It's just on an initial consultation. I really need to know what is their preferred way to sign documents. You can have that written out here with multiple different data types. So it's worth playing around in. But like I said, we'll be touching on that in part 3. So I'm not glazing over it. I promise we'll talk about it again. Now, let's speak specifically to this initial consultation. We have the ability to ask post-schedule questions. So if I'm a prospect, I think oftentimes as advisors, we don't want to overwhelm prospects with trying to ask a bunch of personal information initially for fear that we may scare them off from scheduling with us. So we offer a solution to that where we give the option for this prospect to answer the questions that maybe you want to collect a little bit more information on. So we're giving them the option to answer this and saying it's not necessarily required, but if you don't mind, are you a Medicare recipient? Are you currently collecting Social Security? What kind of account types do you have? What is your veteran status? Do you want to talk about anything specifically? I think this one can land on either the form questions, which is before they've scheduled, or post-scheduled questions, which is after. These are also really great knowledge-based questions to go into that initial consultation to bring up. We know a bit more about the client or the prospect before we even really get to sit down with them. So we know kind of how to drive that conversation rather than maybe just going into it blind as somebody just booking through our website or maybe hearing about us from a friend. We have a little bit more information going into that. And same way with the initial form questions, these all write back to the UDFs as well. So as an advisor, you just go right into that contact that was created when they booked, and you can see everything that they have answered for those values. And these work exactly the same. You add the question here, you can reorder the fields here. Now the invite details. So I did talk a little bit in the beginning about addressing calendar management. And what I mean specifically is calendar continuity. So when we have a firm that has multiple advisors, I feel like one of the first things that becomes convoluted or messy or just kind of a jumbled place where everybody sort of keeps their calendars however they choose, with no real rules or regulations. It's how we're naming events on the calendar. That should be easily templated, which I can show you how, and consistent for each advisor. So what you'll see here, and essentially why this is going to be in part 3 and what these variables mean, you'll see these variables. So think of this as just a way to take templating to a new level. We only want to edit things in one place rather than logging into each individual GReminders user's platform and then making all the changes into each individual event type. That's really cumbersome, and it takes a long time to do that and really opens the door for a lot of human error, a lot of things that you may have missed. So with variables, what we're hoping to do is template those things and then apply them across the platform. So we're only changing them in one place. It's a lot easier to keep up maintenance-wise. So when we talk about best practice for calendars, what makes the most sense is to know what is the meeting type, who is it with, and who's the advisor. Now, in the event description, you can put whatever. We try to make this as easy as possible by offering these variables. It's a drop down. You'll click the one that you want, and then it'll automatically put that in there for you and then populate that whenever the event goes onto your calendar or your Redtail calendar. So this reads essentially, initial consultation with John Smith and advisor name Nancy Briggs, right? So that way I know whether I am the advisor's assistant and I'm on top of their calendar, or just somebody else in the firm, exactly what this meeting is, who it's for, and who it's with. That's very important. I think that should always be in the event title. So best practice there, let's name it, because who knows what, if this wasn't here and I have no idea what kind of meeting this is, how do I drive my day and prepare for that? And I think going in and trying to dig for those notes when the appointment was scheduled, sometimes appointments are scheduled weeks, months in advance. So by the time I'm in that client's profile, I'm digging through notes, trying to find out, what is this meeting for? What am I supposed to be prepping for? So this applies, or this is beneficial and applies to not only the advisor to be able to see their day at a glance and know exactly what's going on, but also the CSA and being able to help you prep for that meeting. So we're just trying to do favors to everybody on the team. Now, something else that's kind of neat here, if you know that for all initial consultations, you want your assistant to be in those, but they aren't necessarily somebody that needs scheduling or needs to be a user on GReminders, you can add their email address here and they will automatically be added as an attendee. So if you know that you need your CSA in that meeting with you, you can add them here, and then every time somebody schedules that initial consultation, we'll make sure that they're added as an attendee and their calendar is blocked off so they can also prepare. If you want to set up payments for your meetings, you'll do that here through Stripe or Square. No real best practice around that. You'll just set it up. Your thank you page. So of course we recommend the GReminders standard thank you page, but specifically for initial consultations, I've seen the custom redirect be used very often. So that's going to be any URL that you would like listed here. So typically for initial consultations, usually it's a URL redirected back to their website. And it's a video explaining what their firm is, what they service, who they are, meeting the team. It could be white pages about that exact same thing. The standard thank you page will just have a little bit of your branding on it based on what you've built out in the look and feel section, as well as just confirmation of their appointment time that they scheduled. So both have added value. I would say best practice as a whole, keep on the GReminders standard thank you page so that way they can see that meeting time and meeting date. But if it's for really nuanced appointments like the initial consultation where there's a lot more that sort of goes into those, custom redirect is always a great option. And then last but not least, what I truly feel is the star of the show when it comes to financial advisors and us building our platform for them is workflows and automations. So a couple things live here right now. You have the ability with GReminders, as most of you know, I see a lot of familiar names on this webinar, so I love to see that. As most of you know, we integrate with the most popular CRMs, Redtail and Wealthbox, and our integrations there are very robust. With that, we also integrate with platforms like Precise FP, who have engagements and PDFs that you can send out through Precise FP, but now have the added benefit of being able to launch those integrations with, or those engagements with Precise FP through GReminders when somebody books that appointment. So specifically, let's jump back to the CRM with workflows. So the first one let's chat about is Wealthbox. With Wealthbox, you can now automate the launching of your workflows. So depending on how you have that template built out with roles and teams, you're able to now send those workflows and launch them into your CRM when someone books that initial consultation. So that introductory prep process can automatically start kicking off once somebody schedules that initial consultation with you. That works the same for Redtail. You do have automations in Redtail to launch your workflows, obviously, but this is really just a much simpler way. You're not having to pick up or create any sometimes tricky automation criteria. I think we know that sometimes with Redtail, it's a lot of if this, then that. So now it's just a drop down of your template, and then all of those roles, teams, users, those tasks will be assigned to the correct people. Same thing with Wealthbox, you have the ability to create opportunities. So you no longer have to manually create opportunities when new business meetings are scheduled or when introductory meetings are scheduled. So what that looks like is really neat. You can fill in all of this. You'll see those variables again. You can fill in all of these with your projections, your probability, any amounts that are necessary, and then save this. Remember that this is the template. So there is still a little bit of work to go in, maybe adjust the amount, obviously, the probability. If this is a good one to just always have, this is an easy templated one, but like target close date, things like that, that maybe are a little bit different or nuanced, you will still need to go into your CRM and update that, but the actual opportunity itself will be created for you in the CRM. And the same thing for Redtail. So you'll be able to launch those or create those opportunities in both Redtail and Wealthbox. Also with Redtail, you do not have the ability to automate activity templates. So with larger firms, we see oftentimes we are creating out these or building out these big workflows. But then we also are in tandem launching activity templates for kind of working through those workflows. You'll be able to launch those activity templates automatically now. With smaller firms, we were seeing that their operational processes were actually just outlined in activity templates, and they weren't necessarily using the workflow option just because they were smaller. So with activity templates and launching, you'll be able to do that automatically whenever somebody books a meeting with you. And then lastly, Precise FP form templates. So if you are a Precise FP user, this is really great for you. You can set for an initial consultation when somebody books with you, you can send out that onboarding questionnaire. So you can immediately start kicking off all of those engagements within Precise FP. You'll get a notification within Precise FP when, same as with any engagement, when they've started working through it, how much they've completed, who sent it. so you don't lose any valuable information. And then of course, Precise FP does what it does. It still collects all of that information. You can push that back to your CRM. And since they scheduled with us, that contact will be created. So you won't have to do that in order to push that information from Precise FP into the CRM. So with that, that is an event type template. So let's kind of jump back. Do we have any questions? I didn't see any questions come in from the event type templates. So I'm going to kind of push forward to our reminder best practice. Now, with reminder templates, in the same way that I recommended you whiteboard out your meetings, I want you to whiteboard out your follow-up processes on getting clients to book with you, your processes for making confirmation calls, and your processes on how you alert advisors and their meeting attendees of changes to the meetings, like rescheduling and canceling. This is important because these processes will then be built into reminder templates. Remember, your reminders and notifications convey more than just information. They reflect your commitment to just excellent client service. What is your voice? You have the ability to create templates for initial booking notifications, reminders leading up to appointments, follow-up notifications post-appointment, which let's put a pin in that and talk about the onboarding process, meeting reschedule notifications, and meeting cancellation notifications. So these reminders can be blanketed across all of your meeting types, or you can get really hyper specific by including criteria so only certain meetings get certain types of reminders. So best practice for reminders is to make sure you have a consistent voice throughout all correspondence with clients or prospects. We want our signatures to look the same, headers if they're available on or applicable on emails. The way we are addressing clients, are we using their first name? Are we using Mr. and Mrs. insert last name? That needs to be consistent, because oftentimes these are small nuances, but they're overlooked. And then they do make a huge difference when we talk about client service and client touch. We also want to make sure that our advisors' voices are professional, concise, informative, where that's applicable. So this can all be conveyed really easily and templated through your reminders and your notifications. Now, I'm going to jump back into the platform and take you through what reminder templates look like and how easy it is to build them out. I'll also give a little bit of insight and examples of what we would recommend when it comes to types of reminders and notifications that you should be taking advantage of. So please, again, feel free to throw questions into the QA. I do have that open, and I just want to make sure that I get those questions answered before we move on to the sidebar portion. Now, I did see a question come in for, I think, events. Going back to the Precise FP being automatically launched, will it force clients to fill it out before booking, or do they get an email afterwards? So it's actually a two-way sort of integration. So Precise FP built an integration for their side, and then we built an integration for ours. So the integration on our side, we kick off the form engagements. So that means that they've received a booking link from you or your office to schedule. They've scheduled the appointment, and then automatically we'll take care of sending them, based on the email that they provided when they booked with you, sending them that form to the email. On Precise FP's side, what you can do is embed your GReminders booking links into a questionnaire or into a form. So once you have manually sent that form out to that client or prospect, when they're done filling it out, then they'll receive a booking link. So I hope that answered your question. And I'm also going to, in next Thursday, when we talk about integrations, I'm going to show you what that actually looks like in both the Precise FP platform and GReminders. Also, a shameless plug, we have a Precise FP webinar coming up. I believe it's June 11th. So Tuesday of that week, so June 11th, I'll be sitting down with Precise FP, and you can kind of get a full scope to the Precise FP integration. Okay, so jumping over into reminder templates and what those look like. So whenever we are setting these up, I recommend for specific meeting types, I do think sometimes it's applicable to have really tailored reminders and notifications. So specifically for intro meetings, this is typically going to be an email that has a lot of information. This is the first time a prospect is going to be sitting with you. So we really want to put obviously our best face forward. Maybe saying something like, see you soon for our upcoming meeting isn't as professional as maybe giving them a meeting agenda, telling them you look forward to meeting with them. So with that, what you'll do to set that up is use the initial booking. You'll set your event criteria to the event title, and it will contain the words introductory. Now let's bring it back to our calendar management, because we talked about this in terms of having consistent. We want all of our introductory meetings or our initial consultations to be called the same thing. And this is why, because then we have the ability to set criteria like this. So that way, anytime, whether it's a manually booked meeting or it's something booked through GReminders, our system will recognize, oh, this is an introductory meeting. They need to receive this email for the initial booking. You'll set the timing that goes out, that meeting goes out. So 1 hour after they have scheduled that appointment, they'll receive a meeting or an email, like this. So what you see here are a couple more variables. I'll show you a preview of what this actually looks like, but you'll see that it has the meeting date and who it's been scheduled with. I have a variable in here for my company mission statement, so they know what we're about at our firm. And then what they can expect to be discussing during our meeting. And then if I need them to bring copies of anything on that initial, and then if they've got any questions, and then my signature. So what that's going to look like is this. So an introductory meeting has been scheduled with insert my advisor's name at 3:30 on Thursday, May 30th. You can learn more about our annuity advisor by clicking this insert pretend URL. These are going to be your company names. During our meeting, you can expect to discuss. Now, this is important. You'll need to obviously put in here, what are you guys going to be discussing? It'll be pretty consistent across the board for most initial consultation meetings, but it can still be edited on the individual user side, even after you assign this to a user by just keeping this unlocked. I don't recommend doing that. I recommend having a consistent process across your firm, but it is a possibility. And then lastly, your variables will populate as your signature. I did see a question come in on how do you set up custom variables. I love the eagerness, but we're actually going to be talking about those in part 3. So I will show you exactly how to set these up, giving them values, and then you'll see them populate here on our dropdown where we have custom questions and all of the custom questions that we have built into GReminders. So hang tight. That one is going to be on June 13th. The only reason that I have it structured this way is so that way I can give you a good baseline to the event type templates and the reminder templates. So that way we hear these verbiages like variables and integration and what we're able to do within those. So that way when it comes time to talking about them and dissecting them, we've already kind of talked about and we've heard them before. So you'll be able to populate that here. Setting auto replies. This is really great for texting. So if you have maybe I can show you, if you have a reminder, a 24-hour SMS reminder, auto replies are really great for that. So you'll see it here. You have a text message that says reply yes to confirm or no to cancel / reschedule. They receive that and they say, yes, I will be there. Great. We look forward to seeing you then. This is just a way to add a bit of personability to your platform. But if they say no problem, insert how we address our clients. Please call our office. Here's my phone number, which can be a variable, or you can put it in manually. I recommend using the variable in case your number changes. You don't have to remember all the places that you wrote it out. To cancel or use this link to reschedule. And then we provide you with reschedule links and cancellation links if you'd like. So that way it looks something like this. So auto replies are just a really great way to seem a bit more personable with your clients and prospects. So I definitely recommend using them. I think they really add to this automated system. So it doesn't really feel like you're talking to a computer or a system and your client maybe feels like, oh, I'm texting my advisor, even though you really have no hand in this. It's not you replying. Okay, And yeah, so Dan says we also include a URL to pre-meeting reading materials in some of our reminders. That's such a great idea. So in your reminders, you can copy and paste any URL that you'd like and make this as personalized as possible. In Dan's case, it's reading materials. I think that's awesome. It's also really great. I've seen that be used in closing meetings. Like whenever they initially book a closing meeting, sometimes they'll put URLs to like upcoming white pages that they usually send out or things about their practice. I think that's such a great use case, but these are entirely customizable, so you can really put whatever you want here. So a couple recommendations on reminder templates. Get specific with them, but don't over-engineer it. I think it's definitely worth making these as personable as possible, but do take into account that there may be some maintenance with that. Or maybe there won't be. Maybe you have identified your processes and you've mapped them out perfectly and you don't plan on changing them soon because they are, chef's kiss. So with that, I do recommend maybe getting a bit personal on the initial confirmation notifications, meaning on the intro calls or on the introductory meetings, initial consultation, whenever they initially book with you, the email they get is personalized. It is over-engineered. I want to give you as much information about not only your appointment, but our firm, what to expect, and then, the structure of our meetings and how you can expect them to flow moving forward. Same thing with your closing meeting. There's nothing wrong with setting an expectation on that closing meeting, congratulating them, saying that you're so excited to work with them. A little bit of personability goes a long way, I think, especially whenever we're talking with prospects. I think really any part of the onboarding meetings, prospect meetings, it's important to kind of over-engineer those a bit. So that way it really shows that you're going above and beyond for the client experience. But then it's totally okay for our existing clients. Maybe we have a specific review meeting initial notification that's kind of specific to review meetings. But other than that, I think it's totally okay to engineer something that can be applicable to meetings across the board that have the same level of engineering, branding, voice is the same, because it just really makes it easy to keep on top of. And typically for existing client meetings, we really just want to let them know your meeting has been booked. I look forward to sitting with you. Here's what we may talk about. We'll see you then. It doesn't have to be something super extensive. We don't have to send them externally anywhere. It's just something to just be an actual notification of here's your meeting time, and just sort of go from there. And then of course, auto replies. I can't stress them enough how important I think they are, because it's an added little touch. Okay, so jumping back to here, let's talk about the sidebar. So what's the best way to use the sidebar? So the GR Sidebar was designed initially as a solution to quickly grab booking links for yourself and your other teammates. Something that we sort of preached to users was we don't want you to live out of GReminders. It's a back-end tool, set it up, set it and forget it, minimal maintenance, as long as you've got those processes defined and you know exactly how you run your meetings, you really shouldn't have to live out of GReminders. It's not made to be another system to add to your tech stack that you have to live out of. But at the same time, you'd still need access to your booking links. And so then it sort of demanded you either sort of keep them in a document or in a spreadsheet, or you're logging into GReminders to grab them. And so what we found, or the solution that we created, the initial idea was this Chrome extension. And so I'll show you that in just a moment. It's really expanded to do even more since we initially launched our sidebar, like setting the disposition for your meetings from there. Did they show up or not? Creating one-off meetings for yourself as well as other team members, and being able to see your upcoming meetings at a glance. The sidebar itself is just very straightforward. All of your booking links will appear here. Excuse me, and it's very simple to grab single-use links. So that's a link that can only be used one time, or just a general booking link to then paste that into an email or embed on a website. But where the best practice tips come in, it's recommended by us, of course, but by many RIA and financial operations consultants to utilize the sidebar as a way to keep yourself or your advisor honest. You're going to spend a decent amount of time initially building out GReminders to fit all of the needs of your practice. You're going to be outlining things and whiteboarding and spending all of this time dedicated to exactly how you want your calendar to be run. So why would you mismanage your calendar by plugging meetings where they'll fit? Even if we mapped out that we only want to take so many of that meeting type, or maybe we offer to stay a little later that night to take a late night service call. This is really how it can get messy. And then before you know it, your days are dictated by your calendar rather than it kind of being the other way around. It can just get very convoluted. So the idea here is, very simple. I'll take you to it. In the sidebar, let's talk when we're booking externally, meaning you're sending a link to a client or a prospect to schedule their own time. So you'll just shoot them over a quick email reply with the booking link, and then you just let us do the rest, right? Like it's very typical automated scheduling, the concept itself. But let's say you're booking a meeting internally or manually. You've got them on the phone. They're ready to book right now. Most of us would open our calendar, find the next available time slot without really thinking too much about the other types of meetings we have that day. So you're on the phone actively with that prospect or the client. So there isn't really a whole lot of time to weigh options. So you just choose the soonest one, book the meeting, move on with your day. You've got it scheduled. But then that appointment comes up and you realize, and this is where I was pointing at earlier when I said I'd use this example later, you realize you've booked this 1.5-hour financial planning strategy meeting right between these 2 plan presentation meetings. It just can be a lot, and you didn't even mean to do it. It was just, this is open, they need to get in, I need to get them in. What's the point in stressing yourself out? So instead, try this. You'll open up the sidebar, you'll click into your booking link. So right here. And then you'll schedule right from this page. So it's me internally, I'm the advisor. I've got Mary on the phone, and I say, Mary, I can get you in for an initial consultation June 5th at 1. And she said, that's great, I love that. I'd click into this, I'll fill out this information. I can elect to ask her these questions or just say NA and go on about my day if it's important to me or not. And then schedule it immediately. And what this is going to do, something to remember is we're taking the guesswork out of managing our calendar. You built the system. You can trust that it's not going to overbook you. It's not going to give you availability you don't have. It's not going to squeeze a meeting where it doesn't belong. You're not going to be overwhelmed by what your calendar looks like because 3 weeks ago you accidentally set this meeting. It's just supposed to keep you honest and keep your days managed, and you won't even see if a day is available because it won't populate here if it's not. So you'll be able to really keep the integrity, something else. You'll be able to keep the integrity of your processes, like workflows kicking off automatically, activity templates kicking off, opportunities being created. Again, if you're that Precise FP user, your form templates are being sent out automatically. There's a lot that you've done to figure out how to streamline your workflow and then build that into GReminders. So why would we make that more manual than it needs to be by manually putting something on our calendar and then hoping that maybe everything else gets, I remember to create the opportunity off of this initial consultation, to set the workflow for the introductory meeting prep process, to send the onboarding questionnaire through Precise FP. It can become a lot, especially whenever we're trying to not inundate ourselves with so many clicks. So utilizing the GR sidebar to keep yourself honest and organized seems kind of like a no-brainer when it comes to scheduling. So this is really going to keep your calendar clean, your time free, your processes in check, so you can ultimately better service your clients. So with that, thank you guys so much. That's kind of where we're going to wrap the first part of this 3-part series. I'm going to go ahead and put the registration link for next Thursday if you haven't already scheduled or RSVP, sorry. That's in the chat. So please don't miss out on next week. We're going to talk all things integration. So we touched on it a bit today when we were in the event type build out, but I really want to show you some of our major integrations and the best way to set those up. So by the end of this series, a couple things I want to give you. You will be able to leave with all of the recordings, of course, of each of these webinars, but also the decks, like I mentioned, those are yours that went along with each one. I want you guys to have those as a resource. But then also, a little surprise, I have created a best practice guide, and this is going to take you through everything we talked about and more, with GReminders tips kind of inside of it, all throughout it, as well as just a total walkthrough of our platform. And again, I did put the registration link in the chat for anybody interested in joining us for part 2 next Thursday. And then, sorry, real quick, I did see a question come in. It might be applicable to others. Can GReminders automate initial meetings so clients who want to meet in January and July automatically be sent a recurring email invite for those months of the year? Yes. And you guys I feel like you're so ahead of me. We are going to be talking about client automation and how we can automate our meetings in part 3. So that'll be 2 Thursdays from now. We have this really great tool called Bulk Send that will actually integrate with your CRM, and you can pull really specific lists. So let's talk specifically about this. Annual reviews. If you know every January you want to send out a booking link to everyone in your January annual review tag group, we can do that. So, and then we'll also create automatic cadences to remind them until they book. So anyways, put a pin in that. Let's talk about it 2 Thursdays from now in part 3. But for everybody really interested, please join me next Thursday for part 2, where we talk about all of our major integrations, Redtail, Wealthbox, and a few other platforms. I'll be showing what GReminders looks like when the appointments live in your CRM and your calendar, what those workflows, opportunities, tasks, activity templates, all the stuff we kind of touched on today, what that looks like and how they work. So lots to go over. Thank you guys so much. I really look forward to seeing you all there. Thank you again for joining me. Have a great rest of your week, and I will see you next Thursday.